We have a couple of big-time prospects coming in here at welterweight. Philadelphia's own Sean Brady taking on Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Their own guy, the Celtic Kid, Jake Matthews. Matt, how long do you think, and I know you don't know, but how long do you think Jake Matthews has been in the UFC?
A hot minute. Here's the thing, and I know you're going to go off, so I'll just take this. He's been around much longer than I think he has been.
He debuted in the UFC, and at the time, he was the youngest fighter in the UFC at 19 years old. He's 26 now, 17-4 total record.
Wild.
And if you have a look at the guys that Jake Matthews fought, well, he's lost the good fighters, and he's beaten fighters. And that's a bit of a trouble. He comes in, takes on Deshaun Johnson back in 2014, again, when he was 19 years old. Got a third-round win. Beat Wagner Roca, second-round submission. And then he fights James Vick, and he loses. And it's all right. And then he fights an Areola, and he wins that fight. And then he fights Johnny Case, and he wins that fight. He loses to Kevin Lee, loses to Andrew Holbrook by split decision in a fight where he was a huge favorite. He was a minus 500. Beats Bojan Velichkovic, and then we're moving up again. We're talking now, we went from lightweight at the start, we're moving up to welterweight. We beat Velichkovic, we beat Li Jingliang, we beat Shinjo Anjai, a guy that Bellator fans called a can when MVP beat him. So just keep that in mind.
Because he is one.
Loses to Rocco Martin, fights the guy with the sweater known as Rostam Akman, beats Emil Mek, beats Diego Sanchez, now he's taking on Sean Brady. Weird thing is, lost a round in the Emil Mek fight, don't love that. And then he fought Diego Sanchez, who was totally into crystals by then, because this was last year. But Diego Sanchez was doing like weird stuff with his hands. He threw that weird kick in the third round. It's just odd, because for me, Jake Matthews is forever going to be like Eric Silva. He's just always going to be a prospect to me, because he came in so young.
Is Diego Sanchez going to have the post-fight career very similar to Steven Seagal after he left acting? Because that seems to be where
Fighting George St. Pierre?
Yeah, or just throwing a bunch of Russian guys around for no good reason. And that's really the only two directions I see Diego Sanchez's future taking. This is a really fun fight. And for Jake Matthews, you said prospect. I did give it a little bit of a face, but you did quickly correct yourself. He is slowly becoming the Eric Silva, because you mentioned it. I didn't know exactly how long he had been in the UFC for, but Jake Matthews has been around for a while. And I keep on thinking back, like, okay, when did I really, really get invested in MMA? Like, kind of get back into it? I'd say probably like 2015, 16. And that's when Jake Matthews, he was starting to be that prospect. He wasn't just a young fighter in the UFC. He was starting to get some wins off. And there were starting to be, I don't know if we say whispers of a Jake Matthews, maybe a future contender one day. But there was a lot of hype behind Jake Matthews. The issue is, he's way too heavily muscled, and it works to his detriment every single fight. Jake Matthews is starting to become a bit of an Andrew Sanchez, where he looks really, really good until he doesn't. And again, you bring up the Emil Mek fight. That's exactly what happened in that fight. How do you beat Emil Mek? All you have to do is take him down. And I say all you have to do is take him down.
Paul Harris couldn't do it.
Paul Harris can do it because he got knocked out in 5 seconds. But if you're able to wrestle Emil Mek for any period of time, you're probably going to get him down to the ground. But as that fight did progress, you can tell the fight does wear on Jake Matthews, whether he's the one who's just really well offensively or whether he's the one who is on the back foot. And it's odd too, because Jake Matthews in my mind is a grappler. When I think of Jake Matthews' best position, he's a great wrestler. He's very, I don't want to say Jimmy Crute, but they do have sort of that similarity where he's going to really try to impose his physicality on you. The weird thing is for Matthews, he doesn't fish for a lot of submissions. He is kind of happy to stay on top of his opponents. And go back to Li Jingliang fight. Yeah. That's by far the best fighter he has ever fought. And he had him in a very tight submission. He almost guillotined him until he, got his eyes gouged out. But you look at how good Jake Matthews can be. The best version of Jake Matthews can beat Li Jingliang in a fight of the night contender fight. Like, that's a very good fighter right there. The worst version of him can get dropped in the third round and choked out by Anthony Rocco Martin. Like, there's just such a big discrepancy between the best version of Jake Matthews that I've ever seen and the worst version of Jake Matthews that I've ever seen, that it is really hard to see where Sean Brady does fit into all that. Because Sean Brady, what does he do? He's got great power in his hands. He's good on the ground. And it is true, because he's one of those weird fighters where you look at him, very striking style, he can submit you in a plethora of ways, and that's what makes this fight so fun.
Sean Brady reminds me of a new age Anthony Smith. There, I said it. You watch him fight, very tall, very long for the division, understands his body, and I know that sounds really strange, but he knows exactly what to do in these fights. You go back, you watch his UFC debut. He's coming in here, he's undefeated as a pro, undefeated as an amateur. Right now, he's on a 17-fight win streak. He was the CFFC champ. He had a win over Colton Smith, who you knew and loved from, well, his Tyrion Ware type of run in the UFC. Go back and look at Colton Smith's record. I know a lot of people don't like him from The Ultimate Fighter. But for Sean Brady, a good test against Court McGee. And he wins that one and passes the test with flying colors. So who do they give him? Another prospect in the Austrian Wonder Boy, Ismail Nardiev. And he beats him and he takes him down and he wears on him. Then he fights Christian Aguilera, who people were high on him because of the Anthony Ivy fight, but really, it was Sean Brady's fight. And he wins that one. And then the tricky thing about all of this is the fact that Sean Brady had his comeuppance and should have had his come out party back in December when he was going to take on Bilal Muhammad, who's now has a main event. And Brady forced out of that fight. And I don't love that. Like, it sucks. If you're a big Brady fan, you want to see him have the fights against Bilal Muhammad. If you fight Jake Matthews, kudos to you if you win. But if you beat Muhammad, you're in the top 15. If you beat Jake Matthews, you're another win, maybe 2 away from the top 15. So for Brady, it is an entirely winnable fight. The thing is, though, Brady's good at a lot of things. Brady's great at jiu-jitsu. Again, he's at a Renzo Gracie in Philly. There's a lot of good training partners there. We've talked about that gym time and time again. For Jake Matthews, very well-rounded, and I like it. You talk about his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu. Maybe he doesn't use jiu-jitsu a lot. He's very good once he gets into position. Doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot with it. He's a good striker. It's just there's nothing that stands out and makes me go, geez, Jake Matthews is like great at overhand rights, or he has a great check left hook, or he throws a nice low kick. He's just very good at everything. For Sean Brady, I think he just kind of has some of those skills just kind of cranked up a little bit. And that's the other thing, too. Sean Brady's 28 into this fight, understands the body weight, understands the throws, understands the striking. Jake Matthews should, too. He's 26 by now. It's kind of crazy.
I think both guys probably understand their bodies by 26 and 28 if they're both in the UFC, but I kind of see where you were going with that. Here's the best thing I can say about this fight. Do you want to know a great fighter you can compare Sean Brady to? Jake Matthews. You want to know a great fighter you can compare Jake Matthews to? Sean Brady. Yeah, they do slightly different things, but when you look at their game plans as a total, very, very similar. I will admit, Jake Matthews will be fishing for a lot more takedowns. He will be more wrestling offensive with his game, whereas Sean Brady, he can kind of concede the takedown. Now, I'm not saying he's going to want to do that in this fight because Jake Matthews, from the top, it's not like he's going to try to submit you or get you with a lot of ground and pound, but he can win rounds that way. And for Sean Brady, that's something you can't let go. You can't let Jake Matthews win round 1 and win round 2, and you'd be forced to try to stop him in the 3rd round, because that happens in a lot of Matthews fights. And it's not like Sean Brady doesn't have the power or doesn't have the submission skills, but the last place that you want to be in the cage is down 2 rounds to none, trying to get some comeback from behind victory. The great news is Jake Matthews leaves those windows. After that first round, that big push from Jake Matthews, he will start to fall off a cliff. And the great thing about Sean Brady, and you had brought it up, the Court McGee fight, Court McGee is another one of those great skill check kind of fighters where he's your UFC debut, you're going in there, what do you have to do to beat Court McGee? Got to defend a lot of takedowns, and you have to have good cardio. If you could pass those 2 tests, then you could beat Court McGee. Sean Brady proved that. He looked great in that fight, and I really think that if you kind of take that fight as a small sample size, if Sean Brady uses a similar game plan, he can beat Jake Matthews.
And the 2 other stats that I have that you're going to think, oh, okay, well, how does that apply here? Jake Matthews, 17-4 overall. He's 12-1 at welterweight. He's 0-1 in the U.S. This is his 2nd fight ever in the States. Kind of crazy to think about. For Sean Brady in the takedowns, his debut, he went 2-3. Then he went 4-9. Then he went 2-2. Very good offensively when he's going for his takedowns. As well. And efficient. And, I mean, again, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in his back pocket. Not to say that Jake Matthews doesn't have Jiu-Jitsu. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well. So lots of different layers in this fight. This should be a very interesting one. And again, I think the winner of this fight, you're 1 or 2 away from the top 15. For Matthews, he beat Diego Sanchez pillar to post that whole fight. That's a good confidence booster for sure. I mean, Mickey Gall couldn't do it, so there's that. And if you want to focus on the Tapology votes, quick, Matt, 1,271 of them, 78% Brady. I'm kind of surprised to see this for the first time. 71% of those voters saying that he's going to win by decision. And if we have a look at the odds in this one, Sean Brady over 2-1 favorite. He opened -170. The line dropped. A little bit of money coming in on Matthews over the past week. Brady now a -215 favorite. If we have a look at Jake Matthews, again, I said he was the underdog. Open at +145. He's now at a +174. So, Matt, in this one, I think it's a close fight. I think the odds kind of really accentuate it because, you know, for Brady to take on pretty well any other welterweight, if he was taking on a gritty veteran, he'd probably be an even bigger favorite.
Oh, yeah.
I still like Brady in this fight.
I like Sean Brady a lot. Here's the great news for him. Bilal Muhammad is just a far better Jake Matthews. Like, stylistically, they're not that much.
Is everybody in MMA a Jake Matthews?
No, well, just Bilal Muhammad, what's he great at? Well, yes, he's a better wrestler than Matthews, but I don't think his jiu-jitsu's at that level. And he does throw a lot of volume on the feet. Those are things that you have to watch out for when you are fighting Jake Matthews. I like Sean Brady a lot in this fight, and it does suck because he did have a big opportunity taken away from him because of his last fight. And now we see where Bilal Muhammad is, so who knows what a win would have done for Sean Brady if he was able to beat Muhammad. But this is a very winnable fight for Sean Brady. I think Brady's going to be around for a long time in this division too. I like Jake Matthews in some areas. If he can get an early takedown, if he can force the fight to Brady and really make Sean Brady become a defensive fighter, I think Matthews can have a little bit of success. My issue, though, is that success is going to fall off at a certain point. He cannot keep that pace up for all 15 minutes. And I think it's just a point in time until Sean Brady lands a big shot to get Jake Matthews down, looks for submission, or just able to wrestle Jake Matthews himself. So I think this is a phenomenal fight between two really well-rounded martial artists, but I do like Sean Brady.
Matt, Philadelphia, bringing that hotness. You get the Dacus brothers going at it. Matt, we're liking Sean Brady in this fight. Really looking forward to it. 3 title fights up at the top. So you're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.